2022 was a huge year for gaming, and there was something for everyone. We started off strong with Elden Ring and ended strong with God of War Ragnarok. We had a new Star Ocean and a new Valkyrie profile-ish game. That hasn't happened for 16 years. We got more Xenoblade, more Bayonetta, and if you watched cartoons as a kid, we've got you covered with Jitsu Squad, TMNT, Freedom Planet 2, and Spider Sores. The indie darling Vampire Survivors made waves while we killed waves of monsters. On the other end, giant corporations made giant purchases, like Embracer Group buying a ton of stuff. Please new Soul Reaver, please new Soul Reaver, please new Soul Reaver. There were also a ton of surprises. One of the most popular games this year was a game where you play a cat and hang out with robots. But what isn't a surprise is my annual list of the best and most meh games of the year. I have a new term this year, Meh-diocre. See what I did there? I combined meh and mediocre. So what follows is a list of the best games of the year and the most mediocre games of the year. So let's get on with it. But first...
I said I am an honorable man.
I'm sorry, honorable?
Honorable.
Honorable.
Honorable. Honorable.
I don't know what you're saying.
Honorable. Honorable.
I think you're trying to say honorable.
Shut up!
These are games that are in early access, demos coming out next year, Kickstarters, or games that I just didn't play enough to place them on the list. But hey, all of these are pretty cool, so let's start with them. The Angerfoot demo. This game is coming out next year, but going room to room kicking and shooting purple bad guys is out of this world and really enjoyable. It's over the top and I can't wait till the full game comes out. It's gonna have soul. Kingdoms of the Dump Beta Backer Demo. This is a retro JRPG inspired game that is currently being worked on by Roach Games, who is run by two real-life janitors. Since I am a backer, I was able to try the beta test and play for about an hour. It is shaping up to be great. The music, grid-based battle system, and cute trash kingdom is something to look forward to. Proteus. This game is very Doom 3, but faster and gorier. It came out of early access, but I haven't had the time to really explore it. Still, the second stage where you can gun down hordes to gory results left me with a definite impression. This is a fun one, even if the level design is a bit wonky. Dread Templar. This game is still in early access, but it brings me back to the days of Hexen and Heretic. The retro design is pitch perfect, and the levels and music are rockin'. It's also just nice to have the option of slashing with your katana or just tossing it violently into an enemy's face. The First Descendant Beta Test. Releasing next year, The First Descendant will be a co-op, third-person shooter, free-to-play MMO, published by Nexon. The beta was generous, and I'm sure it will be quite the banger when it comes out, TBA. Let's just hope the paying part of the game isn't too overbearing. Also, I'd like to add a special Meh-diocre award for the Callisto Protocol, which was rushed, incomplete, and ran like ass on PC. Wait on this one or avoid it to send the games industry a message that we will not stand for your stuttery leftovers. Get on with it! Number 10 best. Lost Ark. Terra Online was a Korean RPG that had so many problems I made a video about it. Lost Ark is what happens when the Korean MMO design is perfected. An isometric RPG with all the grindy trappings, but the Diablo-style combat was clean and crisp. All the systems worked very well together. The campaign was a bit trotting, but the dungeons were epic. The major story battles huge and exciting. After you made it through the campaign, you had so much to do. Chaos dungeons, mining, crafting, pets, builds, run your own pirate ship with your own crew, explore countless islands with even more quests among them. You got your own island. Every NPC in the game had a quest that had you getting to know them better and receiving rewards as you did. Hundreds of hours of content. There were lots of problems with bots early on. They would run around and slow down the game for everyone, but they were quickly reduced in number by the support of developers. The end game was extreme, with the weapon upgrading that would take you a week to grind materials, and then about a minute to fail when the RNG gods would abandon you in your time of need. But if you could get your stats high enough, the story would continue, with new continents to explore. The raids and high-level dungeon content were also fun, at least until your 15th attempt with people who didn't have time to look up the boss wipe mechanics and drove you insane. Stand on the shiny part, rotate around, rotate the shiny, you scrubs! After trying several classes and messing around in this giant sandbox of a game, I finally got tired of the grind, but my 200 plus hours of Lost Ark were memorable enough to earn it a spot on this list. Number 10, Meh-diocre. Star Ocean, compile shaders. I mean, Star Ocean, the Divine Force. I've been a huge Star Ocean fan since Part 2, and the last thing I want to do is put this latest entry on the bad list. But it lacked the strength that I wanted it to have. I played the game on PC, and when you start it up, the first thing it greets you with is the compiling shaders screen. This goes on for 25 minutes, and if you reinstall the game or update your video card, this happens again. I can actually beat both Contra and DuckTales for the NES in the time it takes to compile the shaders. When you are able to play it, the game is a stuttery mess. It stutters all the time. It suffers from the same problem that the Callisto Protocol has. The more you play and the better PC you have, the less it stutters. But this makes the game hard to stomach in small doses. Building up a massive battle only to have the game stutter and break the immersion sucks. Even when it doesn't stutter, the story progression is kind of dumb. You spend 90% of the game on one planet and you backtrack over and over again. There is fast travel, but the game will warn you that if you fast travel, you may miss important things. I still can't tell you what these important things are. The world map is huge and filled with almost nothing. There are some enemies, there are Duma crystals, and the occasional random dragon kind of off the beaten path or something. It's just big to be big, and exploration is stifled. When the game does work, the Duma is fun to blast around with, and blindsiding enemies is fast and furious. But apart from the Duma, there isn't much to do except a skill tree and a few combos that are underwhelming. Star Ocean 6 does have a great end game with 2 dungeons, and the story, world, and characters are decent. It has lots of cute bunny things and towns, and some really pretty design. But it just falls short. They're taking a long time to patch things, and even though I like so much about it, it's just full of issues enough to be meh-diocre. Number 9, Best, Drainus. Goofy name aside, Drainus was my favorite shoot-'em-up this year. The game came out of nowhere, but was finally the bullet ballet I was looking for. The story is forgettable, but has a gimmick where going back and doing a second loop makes sense. It's a simple concept done well. Drain enemy bullets and lasers, and fire their energy back at them as a homing barrage. You earn upgrades as you play and can pause the game at any time to buy new upgrades like more shield and a stronger shot. It's challenging at harder levels, yet rewarding at all times. This is also a great soundtrack to blast in the car. Thanks to Team Ladybug, shmups are back on the menu. Number 9, Meh-diocre, Spider Sores. I made a pretty long video about this one, but basically this game is a former Apple Store exclusive that came out on Steam this year in a bare bones port. It's a fun game for a while until some of the weird design choices creep in. Strange enemy placement, weapons that aren't as fun to shoot as they look, really long enemy encounters, and a lot of auto-scrollers. I can't even imagine how people got through this game on an iPhone touchscreen. Despite the awesome 90s opening theme and several really cool moments, it just lacked in a lot of areas, culminating in a very mediocre game. WayForward is a good company, and were nice enough to grant me a review key for this one. I was really excited. I even emailed them to get it. But when I made a review, apparently I bit the hand that fed me because they wouldn't retweet my video or anything. The only thing I noticed that they did retweet were clickbait glowing article reviews and streamers to avoid any negative criticism of their game. Spider Sores and the surrounding drama just left a bad taste behind. So let's rock on to number 8, Best, Vampire Survivors. I played this game months after it came out, and it brought back the joy of just playing a game. The only thing you do is move your character around and confirm treasure acquisitions and what skills you want to use. There are also some fun items to find in the large arenas. That's about it. You auto-attack and upgrade your way to victory. It's fun in the way that an idle game is fun. Get as far as you can and unlock better upgrades and new characters. You know, the way we used to do before we played games and paid for DLC. Although, come to think of it, this game actually has paid DLC to... Never mind. This game has great music and is inspired by Castlevania. Plus, it's only $4 and the DLC is like $1, so play this. You have $4 or $5. Heck, you spend that on coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. They have the worst donuts. Will Tennyson would throw up if he ate them. How are they in business? They literally have donuts in their company name and they can't even get that right. Their donuts are worse than anything at Tim Hortons, and Tim Hortons sucks. Their donuts suck ass. One of those stupid donuts can't believe they're good. Number 8, Meh-diocre. There are 2 games here, Solstice and Ultra Age. Neither game is bad, just a bit derivative. They both really want to be Devil May Cry, so my recommendation is just play DMC. I mean, you probably already have DMC on something, just play that again. The games are a bit pricey and have a gimmick I don't really love. Ultra Age has weapons that break, and Solstice turns every fight into a QuickTime event. The combat in both games is relatively solid. I would say that Solstice is a bit better, but only try these if you really are clamoring for a new character action game. With so many great ones out there, why settle for, I think I played this somewhere before? Number 7, best. Evil West. Evil West was a real surprise. I bought it off the recommendation of a YouTuber, but after playing a few levels, I felt this cool Xbox 360 energy coming from it. Evil West is in a similar style to God of War, but is set in alternate history Wild West that has vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of mutated horrors. You play as Jesse, a mercenary cowboy. You have a giant lightning fist and a bunch of guns, flamethrowers, and even a Gatling gun that you can all carry on your character because video game. It's really funny to watch him clunk around with all the gear on him. Unlike God of War, the cutscenes are skippable, and the game is mission-based. You go from arena to arena, fighting bad guys and solving really easy puzzles. It's not the next great action game, but it has what made the games of 2 generations ago great. Fun and replayability without compromise. I jumped into the New Game Plus as soon as I finished the first playthrough. Other than the rare bug, it doesn't really stutter or drop frames or have a ton of DLC and season passes. It's just a 10-hour action game with a story that has a solid ending and combat that is satisfying. Do you want to combo an enemy with electric punches, then set them on fire while air combo gun juggling them and then blow them up with dynamite? Because this game can make that happen. If you're tired of games that don't work without a patch on day 1, then play this one, partner. Yeah! Number 7, Meh-diocre. Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. I was so excited to play this game after spending some time in the demo. This was going to be the next Neo 2, and then the game was, well, underwhelming. The PC version underperformed and looked like a last generation game, but it made your PC heat up like you were running a 4K game with ray tracing. The high contrast, muddy graphics were distracting, and there was just too much loot that made equipping your character a chore. The super challenging difficulty that made some of the boss fights in the demo so good were made far too easy in the final product. There were plenty of people who love this game, and a lot of the issues have been patched out, but now they're hawking DLC packs, and I've just checked out. I would rather go to a fun cartoon world, best personified in our next game. Number 6, best. Freedom Planet 2. The first time I fired up Freedom Planet 1, I played 9 hours straight. Eventually, my speedy clears of the game caught the attention of speedrunners. After some hesitation, I joined them. The green cat girl Carol was my chosen character, and the next 100 hours brought me back to my childhood, and I will never forget it. Freedom Planet 2 took years to come out, but it's finally available and doesn't disappoint. All the things that made the first game great, like fast movement, combat movesets, cool bosses, and elaborate levels are all back. Even the voice acting and production values are all better. I'm not a huge fan of the new world map, but with 4 characters and a huge amount of content, this is the real deal and was worth the wait. This may be a bit of a hot take, but I believe this series is better than whatever junk that Sega calls a Sonic game these days. You're better off playing this instead of that new game that looks like a Phantasy Star New Genesis Sonic mod. Ugh. Number 6, Meh-diocre. Jitsu Squad. The martial arts beat-em-up that recreates the cartoons of your childhood in 1080p and 60 FPS. Full of colorful animal characters and amazing background animation, this awesome indie game will fill you with joy and whimsy, but still won't fill up the void in your soul. Enjoy a gaming experience that looks like it's for children and then realize that's total bull because the later stages are so difficult you'll want to pull out what's left of your hair. Play as 4 powerful animal characters featuring All-Rounder Raccoon, Presto Changeo Projectile Child, Bruce Lee Wannabe, and a bit of Hyper Armor. Enjoy surfing on the lava as you fight and defeat your enemies in various locations like the volcano, various temples, a pirate ship, the ice level, and wherever the heck this is. Jitsu Squad is a cluster of color as the sheer amount of objects and enemies on screen will make it really hard to see, especially when getting ganked by hordes of enemies. Ignorance is bliss. Command a complex system of attack combos, cancels, and new chain parries, which you'll have to master just so you can land a few hits on the later game bosses. Or just spam the invincible and overpowered Fury charge and call it a day. Is your identity based on seeking validation with the nostalgic media of your childhood? Then you need Jitsu Squad. You will love the memorable jokes and references that are awkwardly shoehorned in, like Game Boy, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Street Fighter II, Caveman Ninja, The Godfather, all of these arcade games, Aerosmith, Final Fight, Mortal Kombat, Pirates of the Caribbean, and many more. Get your own copy of Jitsu Squad for $19.99 or just beg your friend for a review copy on Twitter, and we'll include a bunch of special guest characters, including Maximilian Dude at no extra cost. But order in the next 10 minutes and you'll receive the promise of additional content at some point in the future. Escape the demands of real life and experience the martial arts cartoon action of Jitsu Squad today. The makers of Jitsu Squad are not responsible for lasting problems that may result from missing work or ignoring your social responsibilities. We recommend playing video games in moderation and maintaining an optimal healthy lifestyle. Jitsu Squad is a work of fiction and not meant to be a replacement for therapy or a loving family. This is Dan T from Twistman Productions. Please like and subscribe. Number 5, Best. Bayonetta 3. It's action-packed, it's fun, it's weird, it's oversexed, it's Bayonetta. Lots of larger-than-life situations, and lots of combos. Some of my friends think this game is too gimmicky, but I like a few gimmicks to innovate a game from the usual battle arenas full of bad guys. Not too many, but just enough. The combat is smooth and is one of the few games this year that actually has animation canceling, as well as new weapons that are extremely varied, plus you can fight alongside your own summons in a system that isn't too clunky. Platinum Games knows what they are doing when it comes to action games, and this game was worth the wait. Even though we have to play on the Switch with those lackluster environments and that wonderful 30 FPS, I'm happy with what we got. It's also won Best Action Game at the Game Awards, so a lot of people seem to agree with this one. Number 5, Meh-diocre, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Borderlands 3.5 here started out pretty good. I liked the characters, the shooting, the giant D&D style overworld map with a giant Cheeto on it. It runs fine, it plays fine, but the more I delved into it, I found that the guns became less interesting to shoot. The characters kept talking in this over-the-top goofy style that was a bit overbearing.
A massive skeleton army is sieging the city! Catapults! Scallymans! Scally ships! There's bombs raining down!
A fun game, but doesn't leave a lasting impression. It also has DLC that I'm not going to play because I'm too busy working and playing other games that have commanded my attention, much like this next one. Number 4, Best. TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Cowabunga. This game is my favorite beat 'em up this year. Every other beat 'em up like Sifu and Jitsu Squad and a few other ones forced you to learn new stuff, to practice stages until you rose to the challenge and played the game most efficiently, or had difficulty spikes or too much complexity in them. Shredder's Revenge is a straight love letter to the 90s. The music, style, and several original voice cast members coming back makes this a retro masterpiece in 2022. I can play it over and over because it's fun and the music is a banger on all fronts. They nailed it. Seriously, blast it in your car. It's simple to start, and even though there are a lot of mechanics, they work well together. There are several different jumping attacks, dash canceling, juggling, various super moves, and slight differences between characters, but it's never too complex to learn and have fun with. You can even juggle dead bodies for extra combos. It's made for everyone, and I love that. Play with your friends, play by yourself, and if you want a challenge, the hard mode is way overtuned and unfair, so have at it, overachievers. Number 4, Meh-diocre. Destiny 2 Seasonal Content. Destiny 2 continues to be an incredible game. I've been playing it for around 5 years, and I always get excited about the new expansion. The Witch Queen this year was outstanding. I even got a blister on my thumb I played it so much. The problem is that between each annual expansion there are seasons. The average season is some cutscenes, a new match-made activity, new guns, and then a season pass, which is getting harder to unlock due to tightened experience requirements, a seasonal artifact, a title to earn with one objective that is way too hard and ruins the fun, like beat yada yada on Grandmaster or something. They usually have to patch it and make it easier. And lastly, a bingo card at the helm to unlock just so you can get red weapons to craft. Bungie needs to stop making this homogenized content. It may take a while for the dev team to keep up, but I think that seasons may be improved in the future. We'll just have to wait. Welcome to the top 3 best and mediocre games of the year. Here we go. Number 3, best. Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Psst. Said psst. What's up? So, you've got M's memories. Uni, why are we whispering?
I have enough to say about this that I can make a whole video, but I'll try to keep it short. Xenoblade 1 is a masterpiece. It revived JRPGs and was a passion project with a world that is unforgettable, with the 2 titans and its inspired design. The combat is solid, but can get old if you play for more than 50 hours, but I will always remember it as one of the best games of all time. Xenoblade 2 felt like a really complete game. The characters were a bit over-designed, but really memorable. The combat is great and the systems are overkill in the best way. You can mess around with builds almost forever. Xenoblade 3 is the most streamlined game of the trilogy, and runs great despite being on the Switch. It's solid in its world, story, new art system, and quests, etc. With a game so good and 2 great games before it, it's time for some hot takes, folks. This game has some really big shoes to fill, and I consider it the worst of the 3.
Wow, cool. Wait, what?
But there really isn't a bad Xenoblade game. This is still the best anime-style JRPG of the year, and I would definitely recommend it. The world is a combination of Xenoblade 1 and 2's locations, and it really takes away from the majesty of it just a bit. I also don't feel that it has the replay value of the previous games, and the characters don't stand out on their own very good.
Are you tugging my wings?
They're fully fleshed out characters, but they don't stand out in their design. I mean, they're designed as soldiers in an army, so they're not trying to stand out, and unfortunately, that's what happens. Lines of dialogue are sparse.
Check out this sick new skill! 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 Check out this sick new skill!
And I'm really sorry about this, but Noah says all the right things to be a protagonist, but it's like he's reading from the JRPG Protagonist for Dummies book instead of being an original character that I should care about. Uni is best girl, and they had to really give her some standout dialogue and one particular moment in a later chapter to make that work.
Ah.
Some of the characters are really annoying too. This one in particular. Then there's that expansion pass. Did you ever wonder why they were able to release the game a few months early? Because they made you pay for it. I have to wait a year now to see what the full game can really be. That annoys me greatly. The good news is that Xenoblade 3 is still a treat for JRPG fans, or just people who want a big epic game. There are standout story moments that are worth the price of admission. Those of you who have played it know exactly what chapter I'm talking about. Some of the cutscenes are great, a bit long, but still amazing. I am starting to feel a bit of fatigue in this series, and I believe that the next game should be something different. But you won't regret your time with Xenoblade 3, and after all the content is released, I will journey back into this world once again. Number 3, Meh-diocre, Diablo Immortal. This game is unfortunate because if it wasn't on PC, I wouldn't have touched it at all. Even though, yes Blizzard, I do have a phone. Diablo Immortal has too many ways to spend real money. But you can also have fun playing for free for a short while. To its credit, there's a lot more to do than I originally thought. But after you put enough time into it, it just becomes another grindy, season pass laden, microtransaction fest, so I'll just wait for a better one of those, known as Diablo 4. I don't want to spend any more of my hard-earned cash in the wasteland. Number 2, best. God of War, Ragnarok.
Let it be known, the God of Thunder is good for 2 things. Killing giants and pissing me!
This game is pretty much what I expected. It is more God of War 2018, with new combat options, getting to fight as Atreus, and a new spear weapon. There is amazing storytelling at work here. The actors do an amazing job, and I love that they really did their homework with the mythology. I love that Odin doesn't need to live in an extravagant golden palace to show his strength. He is the dad in charge, and his Asgard is like a giant winter lodge. It's pretty neat.
Real power, you see, does not need to flaunt. It emerges when the time is right. Don't you agree?
The combat is satisfying, and so is the exploration. There is the matter of your traveling companions who give you the solutions to puzzles and nag you when fighting giant beasts.
It's still in the way! I need to get to those roots!
Shut up, Freya.
I breathe a Vanaheim root! I can help you!
Shut up, Freya.
It attacks through realm tears!
Shut up, Freya.
Bring it down!
Shut it, Freya!
Your axe! Aim for my sigil!
Shut up, Freya!
Leg, not your shield!
Damn it, do you want me to kill Nidhogg or not? Shut up! Also, there's that really long part where you travel around on a big animal and are forced to fight a giant witch, and it all overstays its welcome. This is the worst part of the game. I wish that the skill tree upgrades were more desirable. Sometimes I didn't upgrade because adding that skill to my repertoire didn't seem to fit my playstyle. I still think the combat is a bit shallow, but the new spear weapon added some variety and was a nice change. There is a ton to do and discover after the story is concluded. If I wasn't juggling 2 jobs right now, I could play a lot more. It's a bit long, but solid. That's what she said! I'm happy that this game is continuing to bring Norse myth to the masses and is a passion project worth your time. Unlike our next entry, number 2, Meh-diocre, VALKYRIE ELYSIUM. I asked my friend what he thought of VALKYRIE ELYSIUM, and he said, it's stiff. Eloquent in its brevity, isn't it? I wanted a new Valkyrie profile game. That's not what I got. What I got was a mediocre action game with a terrible camera and a story that lacked depth. If you ask me to tell you some good things about this game, it would be the music, the spear is fun, and the PC port ran pretty good. Combat is overall slow and clunky and doesn't have a lot of animation canceling. So be prepared to wait for enemies to attack in order to counter them, because we don't need a fluid combat system, just make it like Dark Souls, but without the thought that makes that game original. It's good that the characters actually have personalities, and the Einherjar question Valkyrie, which is better than the usual JRPG thing of just following the protagonist and doing whatever he says. They do mispronounce their own names though.
We're traveling together. I'm Egan.
God, my warrior!
I'm Egan.
The game is sometimes beautiful and sometimes really ugly. There is a thick black line around everything, and they don't even try to add NPCs or anything to the world, so it's just you, empty space, monsters, and a few dropped frames. If you are okay with mediocre, this game is just fine, but if you want a Norse myth epic game, just play the previous game I mentioned, God of War. There's a reason that it is paired up with the game on this list. Tri-Ace still needs to make Valkyrie Profile 3. They keep saying they want to in interviews. Get on with it, people! I know that Star Ocean 6 was also on the mediocre list, but at least Tri-Ace knows how to make a good game, and they did the best they could with the money and time that Square Enix gave them. It didn't feel like a half-finished game with no direction and basic progression like Valkyrie does. There is still a good game somewhere in all of this mediocre, but Square Enix may have to actually put some effort in and spend some frickin' money to get it. Now let's just get the hands to number 1. Now there are 2 spots left, but only 1 game. No, I didn't miscount, because the number 1 most mediocre game and the number 1 best game of the year are the same game! And that game is Elden Ring. I have installed the game 3 times and uninstalled it 3 times. Out of the 150 hours I have played of Elden Ring, I have had some of the greatest highs and lowest lows of any game this year, and that is why it is number 1 on both fronts. Let's start with the good. The world is huge and just begging to be explored. It has that, I want to see what's over there awesomeness. And there are a ton of things to find, fight, and discover. More than 100 bosses, and many armors, weapons, and abilities to test out. There's so much to do. People are still doing challenge runs, and I haven't found everything myself. The game is so versatile, and instead of telling the player what to do and where to go, it allows you to find out yourself. The map doesn't even have markers on it until you make them or discover them. Can someone please tell Ubisoft this? It gives you a world to explore and then lets you explore it pretty much without hand-holding. Yes, it does have bosses that need to be defeated to progress, but you can do that on your own time, and naturally at your own pace. The game is hard, but there's so much customization that you will find a way through over-leveling or finding a cool build or synergy that will give you the edge, and if you really suck, then you get that classic sense of challenge and achievement by learning and growing through hardship and coming out on the other side victorious. The reason God of War doesn't beat Elden Ring for me is because while God of War simply gives you the illusion of true freedom when the game allows it, Elden Ring gives you true freedom, variety, and a giant sandbox to mess around in. And that, in a sea of hand-holding open-world games and linear story-driven narratives, freedom is what I truly wanted and got this year with Elden Ring. But why is it also the worst game this year? Because the freedom that Elden Ring provides is constantly thwarted by From Software themselves. They don't know how to get out of their own way. Yes, the game has amazing highs, but the lows were really bad too. When it launched on PC, there were stutters and frame drop issues for almost a month. The dodge roll has a delay that even with practice can be ruined with frame drops. Bosses are mostly fair, but near the end of the game they become insufferable. They love to just mess with you, and have bosses that have almost no punishable weaknesses. They made a system of combat with rules and constantly break them all the time. But oh man, the nerfs. Old games are unique because they can't be fixed. Any glitches and exploits are there forever, and allowing the knowledgeable to get an advantage is really fun and can make a game legendary. Speedrunners are always finding new things in old games. I mentioned how much customization and cool builds you can make in Elden Ring, but From Software is always taking the fun out of their own game. They have nerfed magic in almost every Souls game in the name of fixing bugs and, quote, balancing the game. Infinite Elden Ring magic glitch 100% boss kills? Nerfed. Carry and retaliation and the crazy damage you can do? Nerfed. Then they buffed two-handed weapons. The problem is that instead of giving you the freedom to find overpowered stuff, they basically, through patching the game, tell you what types of weapon and gear you should use. They end up creating a meta and force you to play by it. In a game with so much freedom, this is basically creating the opposite. At least have a way to let us mess around with old patches without having to get an IT degree or have a bunch of Steam versions. There's a lot I could go into this, but the video is long enough. Elden Ring is a great game to end a year full of games. I just wish that it wasn't so micromanaged by its creators. Let me sum up by saying video games are my favorite hobby, and I hope the game developers will choose to make games out of passion and not just for monetary reasons. We need more games like God of War Ragnarok, Elden Ring, and new classics like Shredder's Revenge. What we don't need is more season passes, DLC, microtransactions, and paying for power. We don't need more game clones to cash in on one game's success. I want to play games as long as my hands and eyes still work. Mostly though, I don't want a future of lazy, stuttery PC ports that slowly get patched into a playable state, or games that nerf all the fun stuff out. My advice would be to make games with passion and originality that avoid politics, don't need to be micromanaged, while running well the first time you press play. A game like that would make me a happy man come 2023. This is Dan T from Twisted Banana Productions, signing off. See you next year.